Ugh. Hi.
That is a great entry.
Ugh.
Like you been catapulted into the cyberspace. Whoa!
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you lovely, yeah.
Oh, great. My microphone works now.
Hurrah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sounds lovely and clear.
sounds better, like better than the last time, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Great to see you.
Likewise. Likewise. Good. Right. Well, where were we?
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about non-duality again.
Okay.
Um, because I stumbled across a video, an interview with, I would say, radical non-duality woman, but it was so radical and that it was really shocking for me.
Okay.
And I think maybe, but I'm not sure if people like Richard Sylvester are in the same category. I'm not sure. Maybe you can, um, you know this better. But I wanted to share her story with you and some quotes, and would really like to know what you think of this and what's happening there. And maybe I know you're not a psychologist, but maybe you have some kind of idea what's going on a psychological level with these people, because I think it's so, I don't have a word for this, weird what they are talking about or not talking about, whatever. So
Do you want to give this person a name or do you want to leave their name out of it?
I think I would just tell her by her name. I don't think it's a problem for her, or
Hmm.
yeah, so her name is Petra.
She's German?
She's German, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And my feeling is that in the last few, I don't know, months, more and more people like this are coming up.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how it is in America or England, but somehow it feels like a trend to be
Mm.
more radical and more radical. And
Mm.
I think that's really dangerous because these ideas will be spread all along the internet and YouTube. And yeah, I think it's important to talk about this
Yeah.
because it's a trend and because there has to be some counter argumentation or something like this.
I think you're doing something really important addressing all of this, and that's why I'd like to support you in any way I can. And I think last time I said my perception, you know, and I'm not going out as much now because I'm working on a big philosophy project, so I'm kind of within my own little bubble a lot of the time. Whereas I was doing a lot of traveling up until say 6 years ago, and I thought it had gone over in England and the States. I thought that it had softened when I first was. I was still. I've changed my mind, as you know, about a lot of things, but I was essentially putting across a much more a version of non-duality, which was very embracing of the self,
Yeah.
and that was frowned on by nearly all the teachers. I would say I had a lot of support from the audience who
Mm.
came along to hear. Huge, actually. But the teachers thought that it was completely missing the point. And then, but over the years, I saw that change. And then I hear it on many of them change what they were saying
Mm.
as they matured, as they, you know, as they, I don't mean that rudely. I mean, they got older and they just saw new possibilities and it changed. And I thought that was happening. So I am disturbed to hear that in Germany that's what's happening, and then that could well be happening elsewhere for all I know. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's see if we can unpick it, and see if we can clearly say why it may be mistaken, and
Yeah.
then find something better, which
Yeah.
can keep the best, keep the real insights without the dangerous. Well, increasingly, I've started calling it a non-dual delusion because I think the irony is that people are claiming that we're all stuck in a delusion, but it's perfectly possible it's the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this too. And it was funny to see. Because I think I understand your philosophy better, and I saw some similarities in this,
Okay.
but it felt like it's coming from the same point, but you go this way and they go wherever.
Yes.
Um, so I'm very interested in hearing what you think, if there is a similarity. I think so, but maybe it's something completely different.
Okay.
We'll
Let's
see.
find out.
Okay.
I couldn't be more intrigued.
Okay, so first of all, I want to share. I made a very long list of notes because I cannot remember everything.
Okay.
I share a little bit on her background,
Yeah.
where she's coming from. She had a very traumatic childhood and narcissistic parents. Then later she got married and had, I think, three childs. Then she got a very bad illness, which affected her life. And there came the thought there must be more to life than this. And so she went on this spiritual journey. She started with esoteric stuff like tarot and angels and all the things. And over time, she did more spiritual practices like the work from Byron Katie. I think you know this.
Yeah.
And A Course in Miracles. And she read many books from some German non-duality teachers and stuff like this. And over the course of many years, she had different spiritual experiences. She now refers to them as stages she went through to get to the last realization she had 6 months ago.
Okay.
So she is like freshly enlightened, so
It's
to
new.
say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's new. And she is, I don't know how old she is, but maybe like your age, or she's not that young anymore. And I think she was on this journey, spiritual journey, for 20 years or something like this. So, and then she explained these stages. And she said it started with these different spiritual experiences, like feeling like the whole universe, or having some light experiences, and many stuff. And then it got to feeling like she was the presence, but feeling present through the body, which I think is normal. Like the feeling of I am, which is formless, but still identified with presence. Like I am the presence. I think we both know this experience. I had this also.
Yeah.
So then it went to feeling she was pure consciousness or the observer of everything, completely formless, being not in the body anymore, instead being everywhere. And she had the realization that she was never born and could never die, and everything just happens within her, and there was no sense of personal self at all anymore. And what was really interesting is that she described this state not as non-dual, but instead as the greatest form of the duality, because she thought blah, she was this pure consciousness and not that which appears in it. So that this is a separation, and I think you would agree on this, and me too. Like
She was saying it wasn't non-duality. It was a. Say that again, Cece. What?
she
She
she said feeling like pure consciousness or the
yeah.
observer
Yeah.
was still duality,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was
Yeah. There's
this
something to
observer.
observe. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you are not that which you observe.
Yeah.
So, and I thought, yes, I that's right, I think. And she even considered that this state might be the same as depersonalization.
Okay.
And that was really interesting. And I was like, yeah, okay, I understand this. I agree on this. So, and then the moment came when enlightenment hit her, so to say. And it goes like this. Now it gets interesting. She was lying in bed one evening, and then there came the thought, what does lying in bed even mean? How does it even feel? Is there even a thing like lying in bed? And this thought was followed by a feeling, a bodily feeling of spinning and falling, and the idea that when she hits the bottom, she would be dead. Um, and she described it as falling into nothing, and since then, staying in this nothingness. Um, these are my words because I don't think she would say there is someone who could stay in this nothingness, but I think you get it. Um, and then she described this nothingness like this, and I will quote her now. It's like when you're lying in bed and want to sleep, and deep sleep comes. Who experiences deep sleep? Is there consciousness, perceiving, presence, self? Everything is gone. Body, thoughts, everything is gone. But Petra, her name, but Petra doesn't know that. It's somehow self-evident. You can't explain that. But a Petra who would know that doesn't exist anymore. Can you follow?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe I should put this quotes into the chat so you can read it.
Yep, yep,
Maybe that
yep.
makes sense because it's
No,
really the sentences are sometimes.
I get the essence of it, you know,
Mm,
because it's not dissimilar to things I've heard other people say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where was I? Petra doesn't know that it's somehow self-evident. And then sitting on the edge of the bed took place, but I didn't exist anymore. I was nothing anymore. And somehow sitting on the edge of the bed didn't really exist either. If someone has addressed me as Petra, there would have been no reaction. That was last year, and now it is integrated. So there is no time at all, and all the things I just spoke about, and I think she means the spiritual experiences before, are recognized as absolutely illusory. Because this self doesn't exist. It has never existed before. No one has a self. No one is a self. That's just an idea, but this idea obviously has an effect. This idea builds stories to feel better, but they are all just stories. It's often said that there's only one illusion, and that's this I am, no matter what it identifies itself with. And everything else appears and is there and isn't there at the same time. Tim, please interrupt me if you want to say something to something of this.
I can say something to all of it, I think, but
Okay, then let's take this to the end, and then you can say everything if you
yeah.
like. As in a dream, the dream feels real, but when you wake up, you know it never happened. And that's how it is now, simultaneously. This nothing is the world of appearance. There is a tree that isn't really there. Oh, what the fuck? The self is the illusion. It appears, but it doesn't exist. It can't be found. And all these things that people tell you about, contact with the afterlife, the chakra system, reincarnation, whatever, all just stories. They appear to be stories, but they are neither real nor not real. That simply doesn't exist. Just like there is no soul and no God, there's just really nothing left, nothing at all. So that was her realization, so to say, or no one realized this. Please, what do you think?
Well, in order to experience anything in particular, any state, anything at all, you must be able to discern that as opposed to everything else. So, you know, if I'm discerning the plant behind me, it's because I'm discerning plant as opposed to the other stuff that's there. And it seems to me that's just true of everything, even if it's an experience which you call non-dual or oneness or this or anything which you can go, it's this, not that. There must be a way of categorizing it into this and not that. And we do that on a very basic level all the time with our senses, but here we're doing it on a more emergent level. We're doing it with ideas. We're doing it which are categories with which we say it's this, not that. Now, if you then have the idea that everything is stories,
Mm.
which mean, the good side of that is you realize, oh, everything I'm experiencing because I'm ideating it in a certain way. And if I ideate it differently, I'll experience it differently. Well, that's a big realization. It doesn't mean that ideas are, well, I think it shows how important ideas are and how important it is to get the best ideas you can lay your hands on. But you can see other people, they're, oh, look, that's Christian fundamentalists. They're ideating it like this, and they're having this experience where they going, look, it's all true. I'm speaking in tongues. It must be true, and all of that. And therefore it's self-evident. Look, God is speaking through me, and I'm blah, blah, blah. All of that is type of experience. Or someone in a shamanic church who's possessed and all of that. And that's like or whatever the thing you're ideating, or the scientist who's going, it's all complete nonsense. Don't you know it's just biology? Whoever's wrong or right, everyone's ideating it. Now, if you pick up the idea from spiritual books and other teachers that all of that is just illusion because it's all just stories. Now, the thing in there is just.
Yeah.
It's just stories. So there's nothing it's about. It's just a story. If you do that and you really push it hard, which is obviously what this woman has done, you can't discern anything. So there's nothing. So that's, I think, where you lead to this experience of, if you really push that hard, you've got nothing. You've got no discernment. Now, if you think, because you've heard other people say it, that lack of discernment is some ultimate experience, then you'll go for it. Here's the blind spot. Everything which she said is ideation. She has spun a story.
Yeah.
But she can't see that she spun a story because it's a story about not having a story. But she has to do it because otherwise she can't discern what happened to her. So something happened to her. I suspect she experienced some sort of nothingness, no discernment. And she put that within a very complex story about there being a thing called consciousness. Is there? That's one way of ideating it. I don't think it's a particularly good one anymore. So and the ideas are bad.
The thing is, she says consciousness doesn't exist.
Okay,
I will come to this later.
Even that.
So
because the route she's heading, why it's extreme, is into nothing.
Yeah. Into completely nothing.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes. And so she's got a division going on between the void, nothing, and this is all. Then she's stuck. Well, because she clearly still exists. So does the world around her. She's still having these thoughts, which she's expressing. She still has language. She still is somewhere experiencing certain relationships and not others. And she may think now that she's the void which contains everything, but actually her experience is particular. And so she needs to kind of come up with something to cope with all of that, to try and make a bridge between something that's had a big effect on her, which is stepping into nothing. And I think there's that similarity I think she drew between deep sleep. I mean, that's one which people have talked about a lot. That if you withdraw your attention completely, what I would say is you become conscious of the most fundamental level of reality, which is non-dual. It's undifferentiated, but you can only experience it because you are differentiated. And so you can retrospect and go, hey, this world full of all of this, well, I think beautiful variation is all the differentiation of something which is one. So essentially, although I'm separate and individual, I'm also one with it all. And I can see that. And then, like now, if I do it now, I'm conscious of both. But if I withdraw my senses and withdraw my thoughts, my talking to myself, I stop that and withdraw into deep meditation, you can start experiencing that void, that emptiness. And that's a practice which has been explored by people through the centuries. And the mistake, as always, is to think, well, the analogy, I think I mentioned it last time, is no one, well, there's somebody out there doing it, but no sane person, I think, would go, oh, I've discovered the world doesn't exist because last night I had a dream and I didn't exist. It's like you did exist, you just were conscious of the dream. And children understand that they had a dream and they come back and that's them and they had the dream. It's like that. It's like that you experience the nothing doesn't mean you don't exist. And all of this isn't real. And you can call it an appearance, but all you've done is change the name for it. What have you achieved? It's still what it is, whether you call it reality or an appearance. It's like, it's still there. And you still need an understanding which explains how it can be there and how you can be experiencing it from an individual perspective. So you've gained nothing really. You've just confused your thoughts, and probably by listening to a lot of other people with very confused thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, I
That's
think
my initial reaction
that's
to it.
true. It's so strange that they say these things like it's real and not real at the same time. It's like what? H- how are they experiencing the world to say? I have an idea. I have an idea because I think I can, if I really concentrate on these ideas, I somehow can sense what I think they mean by this. But it feels completely useless to think about maybe holding this cup and thinking, oh, it's real and unreal at the same time.
Well, like you said, I think CC is like, well, you need to say what you mean by real,
Mm,
because what are you actually saying? Are you saying it has a solidity and it doesn't have a solidity at the same time, for instance? Well, that's true, actually. You know, you go down deep enough into physics and it doesn't have a solidity. So you're kind of right.
yeah.
And it doesn't exist in this way independently from you. You know, if I was a bat flying around the room, the cup would not be like this. It's like
Mm,
this because it's in relationship with me, so it's relational. So in that way, it's like, oh, that's so. There's lots of deep ways you can understand that. But if it's just a contradiction, you haven't got anywhere. You need to actually say the one that gets me all the time now, and I wonder about myself in the past, what I meant, because I can't work it out myself. When people say there is no self, and I just want to know, what is the self that you are denying existence to? What is the self? Because it's like when I don't know, whoever's doing it, Rupert Spira, whoever's sitting there on their chair, it's like they must know they're sitting there on, there's a body sitting on a chair speaking in that room and not another one. So it's like, what is the, so there must be an acknowledgement of that. And I think about Ramesh Balsekar when I used to see, went to see him in India all that time ago. And he would talk about the body mind mechanism, a horrible
mm.
mechanism, but there we go. And it's like, well, that is the self. If you can see that the body and the psyche or the soul, just how profound it is that that exists, rather than dismissing it in some reductionist, deterministic way as like an automata. If you see it as what it actually is, I think, which is this amazing creative expression of a creative universe, do you need another self on top of that? It's like, what's this? You know, have you really just got rid of something which never was there in the first place because you made it up first, you know, to get rid of it?
Mm. I think what's really scary about people like her for me is that her definition of self also includes the I am, the presence itself.
Yeah.
That this is also the the big illusion, um,
Well, you
which
see, I might agree with her there. You see, I'm not sure there is a presence of I am. I think what you've got is a system, evolving system, CC, on a psychobiological system like Tim, and it is conscious that it exists, and that consciousness of being has evolved. You know, you see it first. I mean, any animal, maybe even plants, but certainly any animal has to have a bodily sense it exists to be able to hide and to pounce, so there's a kind of a bodily sense. And then as the psyche develops, you have now, on top of that, you now have a sense that you exist as a psyche. And that's when you exist as a narrative, as a story, which gets put down all the time. But it's beautiful that you're a story. I mean,
yeah,
stunning, just fantastic. Which is why when you meet someone, you just go, how's your story? You know, or who are you? Which means, tell me about your story. It's beautiful. And it's what, and so it feels like, well, that's that the process of being conscious is now being conscious of I'm a body and conscious of I'm a psyche, soul. That we don't need anything else on top of that, some disconnected thing that's watching. It's what you're watching yourself, like my body is touching itself. Yeah. Now my psyche is examining itself. Yeah. There's no separate witness. The psyche witnesses itself. There's not some
Mm.
extra thing. And so that doesn't seem a very helpful way of ideating to me anymore.
Yeah, for me too. Um, yeah, I think she means not only that this feeling of I am the presence is an illusion, but also like feeling like existing.
Yes,
This is
that's the
all.
nothing.
Yes, yes, yes,
You
yes.
see this in Nisargadatta as well as he got older. So I mean, it happens to a few where it goes through stages, which she's articulated, where
Mm.
you get to the point where you go, oh, it's just the I am, I'm just that, and then it's like, oh, not that, I'm just the nothing, and you're just peeling away these ideas, and then what you're left with is no discernment, and so there's nothing. The thing which I find disturbing is why that would remotely be attractive.
Yeah,
Given how beautiful and amazing and paradoxical and bittersweet, let's say, existence is, um, I do wonder whether you must be having a very hard time
I think so. I think
if
so.
you want to strip it all away
Yeah,
and
I think
end up
so.
with nothing. Because most people, if you went, she compared it to deep sleep, I think, earlier. And if you went, if you said to me, let's say, you said to me, well, Tim, how would you like to enter deep sleep forever? It's like, well, I wouldn't. That sounds awful. I don't want to do that. I want to experience this. So the idea that you could know you're nothing and that nothing really exists and this is all an illusion and you'd be in deep sleep forever, not even have the illusion. It's like, wow. And all of that nonsense about who experiences deep sleep and all of that's only a problem if you've already adopted a very complex non-dual, let's call it, ideology.
Yeah,
You end up with all those problems. And what people in non-duality need to get, even if they end up thinking, no, that this is the best philosophy, I really like it. Even if they do, what I would like them to do is to at least see the nature of the ideas they've got. Because I bet you they could see it if we were talking about Christian fundamentalism. And if I said, there's a big problem in Christian fundamentalism, which is God created the universe, he runs everything, so why does he allow suffering? Now, if you don't have that idea, it's like, it's not a problem, is it? It's like, well, it's a made up problem.
yeah,
You've invented a God who created everything, who runs everything, and then you've gone, oh, we've got a problem. Why does he? It's like, well, it's all nonsense. You can do that. The same with non-duality. If you start off with some fundamental ideas, you will end up with these intractable problems. And then you end up talking nonsense.
yeah,
And for anyone not in the ideology, it's like it's gobbledygook, just like listening to a Scientologist or a Christian fundamentalist. Anyone who hasn't really thought through their ideas.
yeah,
Because if you have thought through your ideas, you're alert to that, and you're more likely to go, "Ooh, yeah, that's interesting. I'll think about it." Because you're not going to be you're going to want to reflect because you're looking for a better way to ideate and therefore experience this. But if you've got the idea that ideas are bad, that's one of the things I find most it's Indian. I don't know why they ended up with it in India. I should try and do some work on why they should go down that road. But it's very strong. The mind is a bad thing. Thinking is a bad thing. All of the ideation is a bad thing. Get to the void. It's yeah, strange.
yeah, and it's so.
It's beguiling though. It beguiled me. I beguiled you.
Sorry, what's this word? What
Oh,
does
sorry.
it mean?
Like entranced, or
Ah, okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I can understand this because for sure you can deconstruct every idea you have.
yeah.
you can do this, and you can do it to the extreme, and then you end up like
Yeah,
these people.
that's
They
right.
have just deconstructed everything they thought they knew about everything.
That's it.
But does this lead to truth? I mean,
Well, if you said if you here's and I don't know about this lady, and so I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I know other people who are comparable, let's say.
mm,
And what I find then is that if I then go, okay, so this nothing, why would anyone want to experience it? Or there'd be no person, so that'd be difficult for a start off because the language all breaks down once you get rid of the meaning of words, once you get rid of think ideation, you can't express anything. But what I've noticed is that people start going, "Oh, it's wonderful," It's like I feel free, and it's like, well, okay, so now it's got qualities. This nothing. There's a you that feels free in it,
mm,
or this love. Okay, so now it's got all sorts of qualities, and this nothing is not nothing now.
mm,
And so suddenly you're in a you again, it's a kind of a blindness that you can't see how. Hang on, if it was nothing, it would be nothing, but it's not nothing, is it? It's something else.
yeah. There is a quote from her where she says what changed for
Okay,
her.
let's explore that.
Maybe that's interesting.
I think you're right. This is a very good way, without wishing to be rude to Petra because I've never met her. There's a great way of trying to see what's happening with this particular kind of take on non-duality that's really taken off in the West.
Yeah, and I also want to say, for me, it's not about Petra. She
Of
can
course,
do whatever she wants.
of
It's
course.
totally fine. It's just that she expressed these ideas in a way where I thought it's great to take these quotes because
Yeah,
they are
absolutely,
on point.
absolutely,
So, uh,
absolutely. And
um, yeah,
nihilism, this kind of this nothing, I mean, I see it just the same in some of the scientific philosophy. Yeah, it's so misanthropic. It really takes the beauty of being human and reduces it to
totally.
nothing. It
Yeah.
reduces it to nothing. All of that pathos and it's very sad.
And yeah, it's really sad. And I think it's important to, it took me a long time to see this, that even if they deny every story, but what they do is also creating a story
Of course, you can't
about
not.
having no stories.
Of
And
course,
it's and they think this is the ultimate truth, but it's also just a story about nothingness and stories and no self and whatever, blah. Um,
I think that's the best description. It's a story about blah.
yeah,
Mm.
that's what's left.
Yeah, really.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's crazy for me that they cannot see this.
Yes, I mean, I kind of get that because because I got to be so old eventually. I've seen my own blindness, so
Mm,
I think it is very easy. Actually, I'll tell you the other way around. I think it's actually quite hard to see how you are ideating things. So I'd say that one of the roles of spirituality throughout history, one of its positive roles, has been to encourage people anyway, regardless of all these ideas, just to be aware of how they're ideating and how they're therefore responding. So all of the moral teachings, which are essentially part of spirituality, have been look at yourself. How are you seeing this other person? How are you seeing and change it so that you respond better. So that's all about becoming, because I'm aware of some of my processing, but only some. And I'm constantly unearthing more processing. And every time I make it conscious, I have the choice to change it or keep it the same. So it's a challenge. It's a real. Well, what is wisdom? What is the evolution of the soul? It's that. That's it.
mm.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and in the end, for us, I mean, we you could say it like we just know stories are such a big part of our life. And if this non-dual teaching is also just a story, so how do you know if it's true? You don't know it because you cannot leave the stories. You know what I mean? You cannot get out of this. You will always have some kind of story to which you can relate in some way.
Exactly, and that's
Um,
why I say, like, the simplest way that I found to get that across is just to see anything you discern, you must be able to categorize it into this, not that.
mm,
That's a fundamental, everything you're doing that with in the most incredible complex ways. And then because life is a process, you put all that into a narrative or a story. And that's how you manage to walk, let alone how you manage to go to the bank and get some money out, or, you know, buy the shopping, or marry somebody and have kids, or all of that is you're doing this in the most complex way possible. And then these existential questions where you put your, where you can do you're doing the same thing, and then you're looking for the same thing. You're looking for what's the best way for me to understand how to do my job. Okay, you've got to work at it, haven't you, and learn.
mm.
What's the best way for me to actually live my spiritual life? Well, same thing. You just need to work it out. Speak to people you trust and do your best and try and sort it out, and you will feel yourself growing. But if you just go, well, I've got to get rid of all ideas, well, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's like going on, you know, it's just, you know, well, this is what you've picked up on, CC. It itself, that is an idea, is just a bad one.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And I feel it's really depressing. And
But you
I,
see it in much more, it's seemingly benign form, but essentially the same thing. And it is more benign, but you see it with the same thing when people go, I was just sent something this morning, actually, Sam Harris, who
mm,
I respect immensely as a
oh,
thinker on lots of things,
yeah.
going, you know, now the part, all the past doesn't exist. It's just now, everything's just now, and you just think that sounds good because now is obviously where you experience things change. But this denial of time is completely ridiculous. I mean, not least because my sentence wouldn't make any sense unless you also knew what the beginning of it was. I mean, a single word would just be, you know, it's like it's nothing. Everything is process, and
Yeah.
that and that's why I end up going, look, you are the process. You are the past. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's like everything that's formed has formed and exists, and that's what we mean by exist. What else could we, you know? And that returns you to that importance of the process. And then your story or your narrative is how you understand that process
Mm,
as best you can.
yeah, that's a good explanation, I think. Yeah, and I also heard of people who have depersonalization and who lost their sense of time completely and like living completely in the here and now. And it's so horrible for them because they cannot understand music anymore. Yeah, because it's
Oh, of
they are
course.
just hearing
Yeah,
random sounds and the whole song doesn't make sense anymore and they are completely confused and this can happen. I don't know, maybe because of the overwhelm of the nervous system
yeah.
and you don't want to live like this.
It's
It's
horrible.
yeah. So
I
you
mean,
can talk about this like Sam Harris and it's a philosophy and you can yeah, you can do this but it's not a way of living.
we last time, or one of our conversations, I talked about this, would I tell it to my kids thing that I
Mm.
had when my kids were born. And that seems always made me laugh because there I was trying, my kids, when they're little, especially, they're just living in the moment. They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're not thinking about what they did last, you know. And my job as an adult is to get them into time. No, you need to go to bed now because you'll be tired tomorrow. Well, tomorrow doesn't exist for them. They're having fun now. It's like, or whatever it is, or do your homework because da da da. Later on down the line, when you're 18, you'll get to university. It's like they're not interested in any of that. They're right in the moment. And what I saw was this perfect relationship was that it was possible for me as an adult to get so involved in the future and all of that in the past that I did, you know, having a little child remind me that I could also just splash in the puddles.
Hmm.
Lovely, and it's why it's so delightful, just right there in the moment. But my job was to bring them into time, and I did, and to give them language, give them ideas. I didn't just go, I'm not going to give my kids any ideas because they're a bad thing. Words, especially. No words. We're silent around the children. And it's just nuts. And so there's a you speak to an adult who's having a hard time, and you go, you can just live in the moment like a kid. And it's like, oh, that sounds so nice because it frees me from all of this. And you do need some of that, but you need
Mm.
some of that as part of the story. Part of the story is chill out now and again and just feel the sun on your back and lie in the arms of your beloved and think of nothing. How lovely.
Yeah.
But that's part of it,
Yeah.
not instead of it.
Yeah. They are beautiful experiences, and it's great to have this, but yeah, you also have other experiences too, and it
Well,
all
if
goes
you just
together.
stay with it, your life will fall apart.
Yeah. And this happened to a lot of enlightened people who, like Eckhart Tolle, just sat on a park bench for 2 years.
Yes, I know. And the thing that makes me laugh about myself is how, not with Eckhart, I was through it by then, but for previous people, why I found that attractive. But I did. I mean, I would read crazy shit. Like Ram Dass was a big influence on me, and
Mm.
I liked him very much. He was funny. And he would talk about his guru, and his guru being found sat in a, just wearing a blanket in cow shit in the middle of the road. And I'm amazed that part of me just went, whoa, careful with this then. I'm not sure about this guy. But I didn't. I thought, oh, yeah, he's just different or magic or enlightened. Crazy things. Crazy things. Or Ramana Maharshi, yeah, every day all he did was got up and walked around the mountain. Ooh. Oh, that sounds a bit like some sort of OCD thing going on. And he never left. No, okay, all right. Yeah, not sure I'm going to trust him, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me it was so attractive because I suffered.
Right.
And that's the point. If you suffer so much, then you think this would lead to some kind of happiness is not the right word. That you can just, that's also not right, but you can just relax, you know? You think you can just live a relaxed life in the moment and everything's fine. You can sit on a park bench and it's fine. And you can sit in a cave and it's fine. And that's
Yeah.
such a lovely idea for people like me who suffer so much that they just want to be yeah, calm and free and
It's so deep what you're saying, and it's so sad to me because it feels like, look, I can imagine saying to CC then, maybe you should take a bit of time and go on retreat and just have a bit of quiet and just find a beautiful place to be and just sit with yourself and maybe do that even for some weeks or a month or 6 months. And I think you'd really find that of benefit and then come back to your life, which is a
mm,
completely different thing whereby you go, huh, you're suffering. That's a cue to change something. So let's look at the possibilities of how you might move your soul around and to make that easier, what's the environment and activity that would enable you to do that the most? And probably a radical shift in where you are and how you're thinking is what's necessary.
yeah,
You can do that within the overall the evolution of your life. And then then all of those things are really healthy.
yeah,
Like, just take some time and just be in the moment and be quiet. And just when you have thoughts, just go, no, I'm not interested for a bit. See what happens. And it'll be really good for you. I've done loads of that and it's fantastic. You just don't think that that's it from now on.
yeah.
And then you're capturing the best without all of this horrible negative stuff.
I think so too. And it's also part sometimes of CBT therapy, cognitive behavior, blah blah blah,
I
therapy.
do. Yeah, I do.
Um, and that's enough, I think.
Hmm.
That it's I think I needed some therapy back then. I had, but I think I just it, I could have stayed with this therapy stuff, and that would have helped me a lot, and I would have had a better life. Why all this philosophical stuff on top? But I thought it would be a easier way, or not easier, but a faster way to
Yeah.
freedom, because you just have to realize this one thing, and then everything will be fine.
That's really seductive.
Yeah.
That is really seductive. The idea that so I didn't come to any of this through having a hard time particularly. I mean, I've had hard times, many, but that hasn't been a big feature. What's attracted me was what's the ultimate thing you can do with your life? Oh, here's people saying this is the ultimate experience. This is really it's all about having this, and
Mm.
then trying to understand what is this that this enlightenment thing they're talking about, and that's what pulled me in was this kind of, and I think those two together work very strongly. That kind of it can relieve your suffering, and then the thing you said that something this vast complexity of life, and it comes in and goes, look, there's the Gordian knot. You know the Gordian knot with
Ah, yeah, yeah.
with Alexander. You know, no one can undo the knot. He just comes in with a sword and cuts straight through it, and that's why he's Alexander the Great. And it's like it's a lovely idea, isn't it, that you could just one thing is all you need to do. Um, but actually, yeah, utterly destructive. Actually,
Yes. I didn't know this.
well, you've come out
And
very well.
yeah, I think so. Still working on it, but yeah. Yeah.
Do you have some other quotes you wanted
Yeah.
to explore?
Yeah. Let's go to wait a moment.
Yep.
Maybe we take it's crazy.
I'm just enjoying your expression as you look at them.
I don't know what I look like when I have an idea.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
she describes her experience. I sent it to you.
Mhm.
How she experiences things, even if it isn't an experience, somehow like this. She says, when the entire story of the self is understood, coffee tastes new every time. The memory of what coffee should taste like no longer exists. I don't know what coffee tastes like. Or now, sitting here on this chair, what is sitting on this chair like? What is sitting on this chair? I have no idea. And I don't know if it's even happening. There is no one here who knows anything. And then the interviewer asked, do you remember what it used to be like? And she says, I used to imagine that I knew what it was like to sit on a chair. But yes, I still remember what it feels like to be a self, blah, blah,
Well, that's quite important, isn't it? That she, I mean, firstly, I think you've kind of said all this already, really, but you know, if you can't remember what it's like to be coffee, when someone says, "Do you want coffee or tea?" You've got no idea.
blah.
Or would you like some dishwasher water? Well, maybe. And the other thing that struck me is that when we were talking about children, the great beauty of being so focused in the immediate moment is that you're anything you pay attention to, you process in high definition. So if you're paying attention to your sensations, say in this moment, you will process them in high definition, and that can be very, very pleasurable and amazing.
Yeah.
Like when you meditate on your breath, and it's like, wow, breath, fantastic, because you're focusing. So that's the great benefit, and you see that in kids. They're just having a great time splashing in the puddle. But conversely, when they stub their toe, it is the worst thing. It is, it's like if you saw an adult act like a small child, if I did something now and suddenly threw my arms like this, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, man. And the job of the adult is to go, it'll go, it'll go, it'll go. Is it going now? Yeah, you're going to be better. There, you're all right. See, you're fine. It's fine. And then they off again. Because time. You've stubbed your toe, you remember what it's like, you know it goes after about a minute or two, and you're fine. So, yes, sounds exotic that she doesn't know what coffee tastes like. So you've got that, it's all new to me. How lovely. But also, anything which is painful or unpleasant, you also don't know what it's like. So you've got no way of navigating anything. Now, clearly, I'm going to say this, and I don't know, but simply from what she is saying, no judgment about a person I don't know, this is completely delusional.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because she is navigating her life, otherwise she wouldn't be able to understand the words. She doesn't understand what it's like to sit on a sit on a chair, and she doesn't know what it's like to drink coffee, but she knows what the words the interviewer is passing, these complex, differentiated movements of the mouth signify meaning, which she's able to decode somehow without any ideas and with nothing, and say something back. It's completely delusional what she's actually got. And then later, even though the story of the self has apparently disappeared, she can still remember it. Well, she can remember the story of the self, but she can't remember coffee. And it's like she is in what would surely be described as some sort of psychic a delusional state.
Yeah.
And it's being, and like often happens, I mean, if you go into psychiatric wards, one of the very disturbing, if you're into spirituality like me, one of the disturbing things is how many people are suffering from some sort of religious mania of one form or another. And it's often to do with either persecution or grandiosity. So either they're important because God's out to get them, or they're important because they're the chosen one, they're enlightened, they've got something special going on. They're not just anybody, they've got this. And, they can, and that's what, that's seems to be implicit in these quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, for me, when I hear this, it just feels like this is a story she's telling herself, but it's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell myself I don't know what sitting on this chair is like, but just sit on the chair and you know how it is like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for sure,
You,
like you said, she must have an idea how coffee tastes like, because otherwise she maybe wouldn't drink coffee at all anymore, or I don't know.
it's completely incoherent.
Mm,
And one of the other great things which I want to speak against all the time is the romanticizing of spiritual incoherence into the idea that, well, it's beyond words and it's hard to say. And it's like, no, it's just you're being incoherent. Because words are ways you communicate with other people, but you can only communicate with other people if they know what you're talking about. But that's all you're doing with words. So there's a very famous story. Stop me if I've mentioned this before, but it's been on my mind for the last few months. It's an Indian story of the mango. Do you know the story where the master is before the emperor, and the emperor says, "Tell me what awakening is," and the master says, "How would you describe the taste of sweet to someone who'd never eaten a mango?"
mm,
And he goes, "Well, I couldn't." He goes, "Oh, well, that's the same,
mm,
Now, what's interesting about that story is that I always took it to be about how you couldn't express enlightenment.
mm.
But actually, what that story is saying is you can't even express sweet to someone who's not experienced it. So in order for us to have a conversation, we must have some shared experience. So if you have tasted a mango, I can go, "Oh, this mango is so sweet," and you can go, "Oh, great, I know what that means." Likewise, if you've had spiritual experiences, you can converse about them. So if I say, "Yeah, it was like I felt a communion or a oneness with the whole of existence," if you haven't had that, it doesn't mean anything to you. But if you have something comparable, you can talk about it, and we do. So to get rid of forever this idea that it's something special beyond words. No, it's just fewer people know what it's about because
Yeah,
fewer people have experienced it. That's all it is. And for those that have, you can still have the conversation, and you still need to be coherent, because if you are not, you will end up in delusion and you will end up fooling yourself and you won't find what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And they always like to have this argument, you cannot understand this with your mind. You know. Yeah. And for me, for me, it's like, no, I can clearly understand this with my mind. It's no problem. I have heard so many people talk about this. Um, some things I cannot understand, like this quote, right? It's that's too much. But the story of this everything comes from nothing, and then I reduce myself back to this nothing, and I drop every idea, and then I am this nothingness. I can completely understand this. It's not no problem. It's not
Yeah,
so complicated. It's not that my mind cannot get this.
yeah.
Um, for sure, it's not the experience of it. It's just an intellectual understanding, but yeah, I can understand it. And if I go into meditation about this for a long time enough, I can feel it. So what?
Yeah, exactly right. You know, because it's like that. What does it even mean? We People get very confused between two different things, and I'm not sure if it's the same in German, but in English, I see people use the word thinking to mean two quite different things. One is what I would call ideating, which is the way you categorize and therefore make sense of experience. And the other is what I would call monologuing, talking to yourself. Now, these are completely different. You are
Mm,
ideating all the time. You don't have to monologue all the time. You monologue to reflect. And you can monologue in a healthy, reflective, useful way, or you can just go into OCD and repeat the same thing over and over again and have a hell of a time. But that's imagining talking to yourself. And in that way, it's no different than you just never stop talking. But you're just doing it in imagination. Completely different, because that's an activity which you can engage in when appropriate and in a good way or not. The ideation is how you process, how you categorize all of your experience. And that you can't do without, because then if you stop that, you have nothing.
mm.
And if you actually stop that, which she clearly hasn't, you die.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, because you would just you don't know anything anymore. So
Well, nothing's going to happen, is it?
yeah, 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 nothing's gonna. They would say everything happens on its own. Yes.
Well, again, it's like to who? So if you've invented this idea that you're not, that 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 you're not the psychobiological organism, you're not that, even though strangely it's always there in all of your experiences.
Yeah,
But
why?
and
Why?
not a different one. But that's some sort of coincidence, presumably. I don't know. But if you've decided you're not that, well, then you can believe those things. But otherwise, of course, whether you're doing it consciously or not, and you can do an awful lot, well, mostly you can do things unconsciously, and you can reduce. You can make the decision, it seems, to not reflect and just let everything just happen, just let things happen unconsciously.
Yeah,
And again, it's retrogressive. That's what kids are doing. You have to teach them to reflect. They learn it. And that's why you have to stop them and go, now I want you to think about this, as my dad used to say to me, stop and think, Tim. And it's like, reflect on what you just did, because otherwise you just react. So you can go back to that, if that's a good idea. I don't think it is.
yeah. I think that's what they are doing, really.
Yeah,
Because I can do this also. I can go on autopilot and everything just happens, and I can be wherever in my thoughts or
yeah.
but it feels somehow why?
It feels the key. One of the key things in this is identity. One of the things which I really find attractive in the ideas I've been exploring, is it has such a clear statement of identity. It goes, look, everything is a process of forming. I am a process of forming. The type of thing I am right now is a biological and a psychological, a psychobiological system. and I've formed. So what am I? I'm everything I've ever been. And I'm a relationship because I'm always in relationship with everything else. So that oneness, which is everything, is me in relationship to everything else. And here I am. And I have a clear identity. It's all of my past. Now, that enables me to understand, so far, pretty much everything I want to understand about identity. If I've got a different idea that somehow I'm this other thing, which just is a presence, which is now I've got all sorts of problems. How does this presence of consciousness, or any whatever name you give it, how does that relate to this psychobiological? And of course, then you end up with all of these different things. And it all comes from a misunderstanding of the thing you said. You can come into a place, that witnessing thing, where the system is just watching itself. Watching it, and it can watch itself think, and it can watch itself, and it's a good thing, because it's part of what it is to reflect. Because at any moment that it wants to, it can intervene and go, "Oh, don't do that," and change the pattern if it wants to. That's what that ability to witness on such a high level is a very emergent quality of the system. It's not a separate self.
Yeah.
It's a very emergent aspect of the psychobiological system.
Yeah.
And then you don't have any of these problems.
Yeah, but then the people get more radical and they say this is also an illusion, and I am just not existed on any level. I'm just gone. And for real, the people, they wouldn't be able, they wouldn't be able to talk anymore if they were gone completely into whatever nothingness. It's
Even the word illusion is difficult because again, it has two different meanings. Sometimes it means it doesn't exist, and sometimes it means it's misperceived. And people float between the two without realizing they're doing it, because there's quite a different thing. To go, I don't know, anything, like the coffee cup, to say it doesn't exist, it's like, what the hell could that even mean? But to say it's misperceived, well, you could say at least there's another way of perceiving it, which if you're a physicist, for instance, like we've said, and you go, oh, well, it's made of things ultimately which are so small, which are just information. And that solidity is just a quality that I'm experiencing. That's actually insightful. But that's different to say it's misperceived, or it could be perceived in other ways as well, to it doesn't exist. And the same with the self and with everything. It's quite to say our present way of perceiving time may be in need of improvement. Well, okay, I'm interested. To say it doesn't exist is like, well, I understood your sentence because it had a beginning and an end. What the hell?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's important, I think. Yeah. So I want to share another quote with you, if you like.
Okay.
If you have, do you have time?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's a short one. It's a short one.
I have it.
So, the point is that there is no separation. And here's the problem, I think. Any feeling of presence, no matter how subtle, is already separation, because there are immediately two. There are not two things. There is simply this nothing appearing as everything. This is not a concept. This is how it naturally is. And I thought, okay, maybe Tim would say something similar, like this nothing appearing, but you wouldn't say appearing, maybe, but
I would, it's like,
we'll
again,
say
it depends what you mean by appearing. It's like, you could say it's appearing or it's existing, or you could say, look, there's a one, which the universe is a one. It seems just obvious, or it seems plausible, and it's differentiated into all of this. One way of saying it. So, and the one in itself, undifferentiated, would be nothing because it'd be undifferentiated.
yeah.
So there you go. Okay. So, but the thing which is like, so you can see what's happened with her journey. There is simply this nothing appearing as everything. I mean, except, yes, on the simplest level, you would say that. And then the appearing as everything leaves you with all of the, yeah, how does that work? and what is a galaxy, and how does quantum physics work, and all the questions of existence are still there. They haven't gone anywhere. But the bit that jumped out at me is, this is not a concept.
Mm.
First of all, clearly it is. It's a way of differentiating reality. That's a totally naive sentence. Even more interesting, this is how it naturally is. Well, the word naturally in that sentence is clearly a concept, because it's natural as opposed to unnatural. So otherwise, the word natural has no meaning.
So true. I didn't see this. Yeah. Yeah.
It's incoherent. Now, what I want to say, maybe Petra will watch this, and if she were to, what I'd want to say to Petra is, there's a lot of profound stuff in what you're exploring, but there's a better way of seeing it that doesn't lead you into this confusion, and if you really go into it, delusion. And you can see it if you get these points, that you are always ideating anything. You must be, and it's not the enemy. But you can use ideation to go, ooh, there's a kind of a oneness or a nothingness or a non-duality, or whatever word you want to give it, which is at the foundation of all of this. But the place I've ended up is that that's not the really interesting thing. It's a bit of a shock when you find it, and it is interesting because of that. But the interesting thing is that when you go into that and you feel a communion with everything that exists, because you see that as well as all being individual, it is also all one, you enter the most emergent level of reality, I think, is happening. So you're at that point, rather than touching where it all came from, you're touching where it's all going. And that is why it's a wonderful experience, because that is the experience of love and heightened beauty and a sense of being on the edge of something unfolding. It's just beyond, it's beautiful to experience. But that's not the most fundamental thing. That's the most emergent thing that you've got. And so suddenly the whole thing turns around, and then it becomes intensely life-affirming, because your life is about evolving towards that, rather than your life is an impediment, a mistake to get you back to the nothing.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah. But I think for these people, it's the best escape from their self and from the world and from all their problems. So
what I want to try and say is, it's not the best escape. And even it's best not to escape.
I would say this too, yeah.
And that the way out of the suffering can be similar route leading to a different place.
Mm. Yeah.
So a lot of the things which work still work. It's just that they're now no longer part of escaping. They're part of you becoming a more emergent you in relationship to the universe, and touching into this the greater thing which we can be part of. And there is the same, well, it does two things really. There is a way that you can, I wouldn't say for me it's avoid suffering at all, actually. Now it's more like you don't have to create suffering for yourself. There's enough suffering already in life without creating more.
Yeah.
But what it does do is brings intense meaning to even the bitter parts of the journey, and it redeems them because they're leading somewhere beautiful.
Yeah. That's a little bit like what we talked about last time. I understand it correctly. No? Okay.
You probably, I can't quite remember what you're referring to, but yeah, it's that idea that
To the whole afterlife stuff
yeah,
and
the afterlife stuff is part of that for sure. But generally, the sense in which when a terrible thing passes and something good comes from it, it's redeemable.
Mm.
If that's the very nature of the universe, that given enough time, good things come from terrible things, that process of evolving it starts to redeem the very worst. And I think not only is that happening, but human beings, you and I, get to play an important role in that happening. We do that all the time. And I mean, just in the most lovely and simple, inspiring, like somebody has some terrible thing happen to their child, and they dedicate their life to making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else's child. It's a very powerful thing. You look around for what can I redeem? What can I play a role in redeeming? And that's beautiful. And then it is better for everyone.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think that the whole humanity is on this path because we have so many cruel people and evil people and
Mm-hmm.
you know.
We have, but I suspect it's. I mean, you're right. Of course, you're right. And it's quite possible they bunch together, and get to know each other. But I suspect it's few. I often think, these are the keys that I carry for my house, my car, my office, and all the rest of it. And it often strikes me, I carry that 99% of people, if they came to my front door and found it open, would go, "Hey, do you know your front door's open?" 1 out of 100, maybe 1 out of 1,000 would go, "Oh, great, I'll have the TV." It's like, it's a small, most people, have reached that at least. And so I do think we need to be proud of our humanity and how far we've come. And because if you study history, like I've done all my life, the history is it's a much uglier place to live.
That's true. Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's true.
that's because why is it different? Because of all of the people that made it better. And we
Mm.
are those people. We're the people
Mm.
now. And I mean, that's happening in this conversation. I'm here talking to you because I'm an old person who's going to be leaving soon, and you're a younger person who's got a opportunity in the next period of your life to contribute something and clearly wants to. So I want to encourage you, give you anything I've got that's of any use. Go, look, here, have this. See if you can do some good with it. And that's me trying to do some good, and then you try and do something. And you're trying to do it now. You went through a hard experience, like the analogy with the children, and you're going, how can I turn that into something? How can I redeem it? How can I turn it into something good? Which means other people don't have to go through that experience and can come in at the place I've come into.
Mm.
That's lovely. I mean, that's why I talk to you, because I love that.
Yeah, I think you're right. That and it's funny because you're such an optimistic person, and I'm more on the pessimistic side. So maybe I tend to really see more of the dark stuff going on the planet, and it's hard for me to think that maybe, but most of the people are um on the good side, so to say.
I think most of the people are in the middle,
Mm,
because that's true always. It
mm,
moves forward, but the majority are neither the leading edge nor the bit hanging back. And those are minorities always, but the whole thing has been moving forward to some degree. And there's two things I think to avoid, and that's naivety and cynicism. And one of the things that can come if you've had the sort of life I've had is naivety,
mm.
because no, we'll just love each other and it'll all be fine. It won't. But it's taken me a long while to see my own naivety. And I see naivety everywhere in spirituality and in certain forms of progressive politics. It's very naive. And it's sweet, but dangerous, because the world,
Mm.
you need to be alert to the other side. What happens on the other side is you fall into cynicism, which is and you think it's all just going to hell in a handcart, which, interesting again, if you study history, people have always thought that. They've always thought they're in the worst of times, always. And they haven't been.
Mm.
Actually, they've been in probably the best of times, often. but they just can't see it. So what I love for me about this evolutionary understanding of everything just forming and being more than the moment before, even when it's bad, it's always progress, it's more than because it includes the past. What I love about it is that it cuts through cynicism and naivety, because it says to the naive person, which I've been, you've still got to live with all of all those other labels. There's still people living in the Middle Ages and they're dangerous. You've got to live with that. You still need to live with biology, and it's going to go wrong and it's going to mess you up, and you've got to live with that. You've got to live with all, volcanoes erupt and cause mayhem. You've got to live with that. Everything that's evolved, you still got to live with that. Even though you're experiencing love, and it's like, you still got to live with that. And then for the cynic, it goes, yeah, but can't you see that it's constantly evolving? And there's no limit to that. And if we commit to that evolution, all those things that you're alert to and you need to be, we can, bit by bit, we can make them better. And then you're bringing that together. You're bringing both, you're avoiding those two extremes, and you're seeing the voice, because you need people who are going, yeah, the bad thing over there, and you need people going, yeah, forward to the good thing. We need both of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I like it. Do you want to hear another quote? Another
Okay.
beautiful non-duality. Oh, she said something about near-death experiences.
Okay. All right.
Maybe that's interesting for you.
Okay.
Um,
Let's do one or two more, or whatever you've got there, and
yeah.
then that feels about right. Then, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Um,
It's been great though. I love talking to you. It's lovely.
um, she didn't have an near-death experience herself, but she has an opinion what's happening there.
Okay.
I'm curious what you got to say to this. So she said, this light, which is experienced during near-death experiences, is still consciousness. This near-death experience still takes place within the story, and consciousness itself, that is the illusion. Consciousness at whatever it appears as I am the body, or consciousness, or as I am formless, or just this pure perception, that's all consciousness, and consciousness is the great deception. And when light or love is perceived during a near-death experience, if you look at it the other way around, it is nothing, which isn't even nothing. The very first thing that appears from nothingness is light. Light is the first appearance. And then she said, I don't know what it's like when this apparent body leaves this apparent dream. I mean, it's already nothing, but no one can know what it's like when the world of appearance is completely gone. I thought you liked the sentence. I don't know what it's like when this apparent body leaves this apparent dream. It's all apparent.
I know, and I
Uh,
need to be, I need to put my hand up, because,
mm,
I've written this sort of language in the past.
really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When the dream metaphor, it was never anti the self, but it was a way of trying to make sense of, oh, we're really this presence of consciousness, and then there's this. So this must be an appearance in consciousness like a dream. And that is an old analogy you'll find, everywhere. And I find it very helpful. I think I've said to you already, I think what happened was for myself, I got so good at expressing this philosophy that I saw what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
And so I have used all of that language. So I kind of understand what she's saying. But it's the same, really, isn't it? It's like, it reminds me of Nisargadatta, the later Nisargadatta especially, where he was going, I'm just outside everything. I'm outside, I'm behind everything, and I think it's where, if you keep going, it's where you end up inevitably. And she's probably read him, I suspect, as well, and is probably influenced by that. Maybe not.
I don't know.
I, Yeah, there's all sorts. What appears first is light. I mean, where did she get this from? I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, it's non-conceptual, but the light's appearing first, and that's a may or may not be true, but it's a big statement about the nature of reality. That it starts with a thing called light. What is light exactly? Etc., etc., etc. It's just riddled with people who don't like reflecting say stupid things
Hmm.
because not thinking does not make you enlightened; it makes you stupid.
Yeah, and there are a lot of concepts in this, I
There's
think.
all concepts.
It's,
there's no,
yeah,
there's no other, there's nothing else you've got.
I mean, your philosophy is also a concept, but this is
Yes,
also a concept.
it's
So
all, it's
why
all,
that's what?
it's all to maybe just to recap the whole discussion. It's like it for me, it how we everything we experience, we are discerning as this, not that. The way we discern this, not that, primarily for us is with things we call ideas, which are categories within which we go, it's a this, it's not a that. And we put that into a process, which is what we mean by a narrative or a story. And that is how we do everything from walk down the road to have a discussion about the nature of God. All of it's the same. If you introduce ideas that somehow you can know things in some other mysterious way, that's a big claim, and it's made in spirituality all the time, and it's self-evident, as we discussed last
Mm.
time, a big claim. What you need to be able to say is, how are you discerning it if you're not discerning it? How do you know what it is? How can you say it's this and not something else? How can you say it's nothing and not something? For instance, everything relies on the ability to discern. And that ability to discern has been evolving from the very basic, very first early physical systems discerning each other, which is why, they get chemical reactions. Our systems discerning and reacting to each other. And that's going to become plants discerning the light, and bats discerning echoes, and you and I discerning sounds and music, and discerning ideas through this symbolic noises that I'm making at the moment. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and somehow there has to be someone who is doing this.
Of course.
It's just doesn't happen automatically. So like the person vanishes into nothing, but somehow this body is able to speak about it, even if there isn't somebody who knows anything anymore. It just doesn't make sense.
The
It's
great, the great, the great sadness. Is that the right word? I don't know. For me, as somebody who has spent their life since very young exploring spiritual things, is that the reason that it is so marginalized from mainstream intellectual life is because so much of it is nonsense, and therefore it's so easy to look at and go, well, this person can't even this person doesn't even know what the words they're using means, so they contradict themselves sentence by sentence, and so whatever they're experiencing is they're just in some sort of psychological delusion. And what that does is it means that we stop seeing that even for this person, there's things of value in there, of real value, and things which we should be sharing and exploring and taking seriously. But we lose those things because
mm,
it becomes we end up throwing out the baby in the bathwater, the baby with the
mm,
bathwater, as people say. So.
yeah.
So for me, it's like, no, let's stop all of that and let's find a way of actually seeing these states as a more emergent level of our human evolution. And then we can really do them justice and still gain all the valuable insights and the optimism that they engender.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's really important to look at all this stuff in a new way and stop relating on texts from thousands years ago,
Yeah,
from like the Bhagavad Gita or Upanishads or
yeah,
Vedas or the Bible, whatever. Please look at it from the knowledge we have now.
yeah.
Yeah. Because
Absolutely. I
so
mean,
much changed, and we have psychology and all this stuff. I mean,
the one that gets me always is like, if I, if I find out I've got a brain tumor, I'm not going to go, well, let's follow the way of the ancient Greeks who thought the brain was a cooling system for the blood. It's like, no, things have moved on. I don't want the ancient manuscript. Thank you very much. I'm going to go for the latest understanding, please. And we should have that with everything. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be immensely grateful to these human beings in the past
for sure.
who moved it on,
Yeah.
that some of the things they were saying might still be really important, probably are, or that we might return, say, which is popular at the moment, to cultures unlike our own. You know, we might go to the Amazon. I remember doing that and thinking, oh, there's insights here which we lack because of the different lives they've been living. That's valuable, but it doesn't have to be a romanticization of some ancient thing we've fallen from, where the ancients knew and we've forgotten,
Yeah.
because that's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can look at all these experiences, like the observer thing, I think in a psychological way now,
Yeah,
and we can see similarities between things like dissociation and
yeah.
spiritual states and
And the interesting thing with that, once you get that, and we've, obviously we've touched on that a fair bit, is to say, oh, so what is the difference? Why is this one positive and this one not? That's
mm,
really, I mean, that's a really interesting inquiry, isn't it? Because that's like, oh, well, let's try and get to the one that's positive and avoid the one that's not.
mm,
And it's simply a shift in the way you ideate it, I suspect.
yeah, yeah, I think so too. Okay, bro, I don't know if I even want to. I will look at if I have one last, but I don't know if it's even necessary. Yeah, because it's always the same stuff, a little bit different. The last thing.
Okay. All right.
People always assume I know something, but actually I don't know anything. Presence simply disappears, whatever kind of presence. Consciousness doesn't exist. And what remains is what appears now. Everything still appears, except pride, guilt, and responsibility. These are obviously feelings that are linked to this illusion of self.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know what she means by consciousness doesn't exist, and yet everything appears, because it seems to me that what appears to me is what I'm conscious of, but maybe she means something else. I suspect she's invented an idea of there being a thing called consciousness, and that's gone. But that's gone for me as well, because I don't think it was ever there. So that's gone, hurrah. And then this pride, guilt, and responsibility. Well, there's a definite, there you got your relief, haven't you? I don't have to be
Yeah.
responsible for myself or anything else, and who knows what's good and bad, and I'm free, and it again offers that escape, and there's a negativity that's associated with them, isn't there? I mean, I grew up in a generation which saw responsibility as a bad thing. I've now become an old man who thinks it's a good thing, and that what it means really is I can respond here. When I feel that huge benevolence, that enormous love, I'm responsible for talking to you, being with my family, the work I do, all of the individual relationships, that's where I can respond. And I have to respond. It's the question is, how do I respond? So if you lose that, wow, you've lost everything. It's like because the whole point of reflection is to learn to respond in a way that you feel is good and
Mm.
which you could be proud of.
Could
and
be.
and if you respond badly, you might feel shame or guilt for a little bit and go, oh, that wasn't good, and that will inspire you to change how you respond. Now, the negativity is feeling, oh, I'm responsible for everything. No, you're not. You can't do that. You can't be responsible for all the terrible things in the world. That's impossible. You're only responsible for where you respond. That's it. Or I'm always guilty. I just carry it. It's like, no, you don't need to do that. You just need to learn and move on. Or I'm just so proud. I think I'm great. It's like, no, you don't need that. You just need to be genuinely pleased when you do something that's worthwhile and good for you and feel good about yourself, and then keep going and do it again. And so suddenly all of those human qualities are no longer this burden on your shoulder. They're a challenge, and but they're also what brings meaning to your life. And she doesn't want meaning to her life because she hasn't got a life. But for those of us that do have a life and want meaning, then all of these things can be done in such a way that they're detrimental, or they can be understood in a way in which they're really life enhancing.
Mm.
And that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
It's misanthropic.
Yeah, it
It
is.
is it hates people, and it hates what makes people people. And the place I've ended up is I love people. They irritate the hell out of me. Well, of course, it's like it's like we're all a mixed bag. I'm a mixed bag. It's like, of course, and but even within that, that's the love, really. I think, don't you? It's like when you think of anyone you have your close relationships with, the love is that you see they're a mixed bag and that you're a mixed bag, and that you do your best together, and that you come out at the end of it better than you started. That's it. How lovely.
Yeah. 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 Cannot add anything to this. Yeah. Yeah. But it's just the last thing to say. It's really this assumption or this story they tell themselves that they don't know anything. People always assume I know something, but actually I don't know anything. And then they are talking about all this kind of stuff they know. They even know what near-death experiences are, what where light comes from first, and what happens when this self dies, so to say. All these things they know, but they
Well,
don't know anything.
you're completely
Okay.
right, and all I would say to end our conversation is, if I ever have the good fortune and pleasure to meet this lady in person, then I will be the first to reassure her that I don't assume she knows anything, and she does sound like she knows nothing.
Yeah. I will find out if she speaks English, and then I will connect you two, and you can have a
I would
discussion.
definitely have a conversation with her, because, like I said, I think there's valuable things inside there, and I think one of the key things is that you see, if you're a work in progress, that you'll get insights that change how you understand. That's what wisdom is, learning to understand it in a better way. So for me, it's like the fact that I can engage with someone who thinks very differently. I may see things I missed, and I certainly want to say to them, look, there's things in what you're saying which are valuable. It's not, I was playing when I said, nothing, just because she'd said it, she knows nothing. And you kind of think, well, maybe you don't. And want to turn that around, because there's an underlying, I see it a lot in spirituality. I don't know if it's in her because I've never met her, but there's a kind of self-importance for these people that don't have selves,
Yeah,
where where it's all really about trying to shore up an identity they claim they don't have. And that's slightly distasteful.
yeah. And also, I mean, they disappeared and they are dead, but somehow all these dead people want to show up and talk about this.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
have no decision, they have no choice. Nobody does this, but it happens. Why?
yeah,
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
all these things we can criticize, but I think it's also important that you come from this point where you can also value some things in this philosophy, and don't want to dismiss these people, and even want to talk to them. I don't want to do this, but I think it's great when there are people who do this.
I would.
And
The word which is always missing for me is the word love. And I think the saving grace on my journey was that very early on, it seemed obvious that the thing which was attractive to me was when I experienced this enormous love, and that's what I wanted to keep returning to. Not the nothing, that wasn't attractive to me ultimately. It seemed like it might be, but the love. And when I enter into a way of discerning the nature of reality, that there's this enormous love, that my response for me is, yeah, this is the thing that I'm drawn to. This feels really good and important, and it matters. And that love is absolutely inclusive of all the individuation and all the different things that make life so rich. And
Mm,
it's a very different approach, and I much prefer it.
yeah, I would prefer this too. Now. So
Good.
yeah, thank you that we could talk about this. It was important for me to hear your opinion, and for me it feels a little bit I want to share a few things on my YouTube channel about non-duality and dangers of non-duality and so on, but it feels like maybe for my personal life, this conversation might be the end of my obsessive thinking about all these kind of things because I just don't want this belief system in my life anymore, and I want to go in a direction which feels better to me and which supports myself and my soul. And yeah, your I think your philosophy helps me a little bit in this, and
I,
yeah.
what a beautiful thing to arrive at the end of our conversation. So lovely to hear you say that. Isn't that great? Yeah, good for you. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure that will happen.
I hope so.
I think so. I think so. I'm not sure of anything, but I am optimistic that it will happen.
Me too.
Good.
So thank you and have a great day.
And you. All right.
Thank you. Bye.